Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you about this trial. I'll say at the outset that it's a little bit different trial than you may be used to. It's not really about a medication or a device. It's about how we deliver care delivery, how we do care delivery in stroke. And it's a cluster randomized, blinded, pragmatic comparative effectiveness trial. These are disclosures. And a little bit of background on why we might do something like this first. We felt like stroke was a complex disease and our current care delivery really didn't match that complexity, and that our existing models were focused on the acute phase, and that the post-acute phase was a high-risk period for mortality, recurrence, and complications, and that we ought to be looking at a more longitudinal care delivery design. So stroke is this high-impact, high-risk disease, and importantly, we have lots of intersecting comorbidities. And it's acute and chronic disease. And so we have this acute phase where it's really important that we do the right thing in a time-sensitive way, but then in the post-acute phase, we can undo all of that if we don't manage these patients aggressively. Multiple care delivery personnel are involved in this appropriately, but how to organize them a little bit better. And so this post-acute period really is a period where you may not recognize how poor our risk factor control is. I'm going to show you some examples of that. So this is our current design that really silos care into acute in-hospital, post-acute institutional care, and then home care with different providers and different focus of care. So we felt this was a design flaw that we could try to fix. And because of this complex disease, we have multiple caregivers involved, and the analogy to the elephant with people with blinders on only being able to see their part, how could we integrate this care delivery in better ways? So there is a high risk of mortality, readmissions and recurrences for Medicare data in the Perth stroke study. And most of the readmissions, or at least 26% of them, are for a stroke in a year's period. This is community data around how well we do risk factor control in the post-acute period. And the two things, are they on a treatment like a medication, but then are they at target? And if you look at this carefully, you can see that we're about 40 to 50% at target. And this is true a little bit better in clinical trials, but similar kinds of results. And if you try to do what we have to do in stroke patients, deliver comprehensive multiple risk factor management simultaneously, it becomes really very difficult. And this data from REGARD show that the more you try to do that with multiple risk factors, the less effective. So we did a pilot study that was a CMS Innovations grant that was a 4-year, 4,000 patient study, and we looked at something called an integrated practice unit design that looks at care over a year's period of time. And we were able to decrease stroke recurrences, readmissions, and improve risk factor control. And this was kind of a diagrammatic look at the design. So the dotted lines are really technologies that we use to integrate care with a single system over a year. And all of our care delivery post-stroke was in the home with a nurse and a lay health educator team that were integrated back with the acute hospital team. So these were sort of the two teams, this central hospital-based team and then the stroke mobile team that followed the patient wherever they went, at least once a month for a year, with protocol-driven and scale-based care delivery design. And so their care was based off cut points in clinically validated scales. And these were some of the outcomes that were able to decrease readmissions, cost, and risk factor control that got into the 80 to 90% range at target. So our study design for this is a cluster randomized trial by site, not by patient. And so sites are randomized. And our outcomes are functional and quality of life, and those are blinded. We'll enroll patients and follow them over a year. We're an 18-site trial. We have some secondary outcomes that include readmissions, recurrences, risk factor control, depression, caregiver strain, and we'll also be looking at cost. Our funding agency is PCORI. Clinical Coordinating Center is at Vanderbilt, and we have a statistical center at UAB, George and Jenny Howard, DSMB at University of Iowa with Harold Adams. And we have a number of stakeholder partners, including the American Stroke Association, Centers for Medicare Services, a joint commission. And I have a patient co-investigator because this significantly involves patients and their caregivers. These are our clinical sites. We include all stroke subtypes except TIA and really don't have many exclusion criteria in order to have generalizability. We'll have one arm that stays in a comprehensive stroke center design, and we'll collect these outcomes data over the years period of time, and then the integrated practice unit arm you see on the right. We have a couple of technologies that we utilize in this, Vivify Health for chronic disease management and Dialogue EDU for patient and caregiver education portal that's customized to the patient's needs. So differences between these two: acute care versus a continuum over a year. Comprehensive stroke centers, we sort of focus on complex, on process compliance and performance measures, and focus on the providers. And in our integrated practice unit design, we're focused on patient-focused outcomes and the patient and family, and doing it in the clinic versus in the home. So we think this is an important look. We often initiate new designs for care delivery without too much research, and we think this is an important area. So thank you very much.